The First Alert update, a state appeals court scheduled to make a ruling on whether convicted killer Stephen Avery should be granted.
Good evening, people. 5 years ago, my friends and I were in prison for a crime we did not commit.
That's great. I never did this before. This will be my last time doing it. This is my first experience.
Imagine spending years behind bars for a crime you never committed. Your pleas ignored, your innocence buried under a broken system. Sounds like a nightmare, right? But for countless wrongfully accused individuals, this is a horrifying reality. How does justice fail so miserably? And why do some cases remain unresolved even when the truth is clear? Today, we uncover the chilling stories of those who fought against a system designed to silence them. Stay with us till the end. You won't believe what we found. Twice convicted, twice wronged. In 1985, Stephen Avery, a man from Manitowoc County, Wisconsin, was convicted of a crime he didn't commit. A woman was attacked, and despite having 16 alibi witnesses, Stephen was sentenced to 32 years in prison. The justice system ignored key evidence and DNA testing wasn't available. For 18 years, Avery fought for freedom. In 2003, new DNA tests proved he was innocent. The real attacker, Gregory Allen, had been free all along. Avery was released, and the system admitted its mistake. But just when things seemed right, everything changed again. In 2005, Avery was arrested again, this time for the murder of Teresa Halbach, a photographer. Shockingly, the police handling his case were the same ones he was suing for $36 million over his wrongful conviction. Many believe the case was built on planted evidence, especially the key and bullet found after multiple police searches. After a controversial trial, Avery was sentenced to life in prison without parole. His story became world famous through Netflix's Making a Murderer. Many still question, was this justice or another setup? What do you think? Was Stephen Avery framed again? Let's discuss in the comments. The boxer who fought for freedom. In 1966, rising boxing star Reuben "Hurricane" Carter was arrested for a brutal triple murder in Paterson, New Jersey. Despite having no motive, no forensic evidence, and shaky eyewitness testimony, Carter and his friend John Artis were sentenced to life in prison. Carter, who was once a top contender for the middleweight championship, saw his dreams shattered overnight. He spent 19 years behind bars, writing his famous autobiography, The 16th Round, which caught the attention of celebrities and activists. Even legendary musician Bob Dylan wrote the song Hurricane in 1975 to highlight the injustice. New evidence emerged proving the case was built on lies and racial bias. The key eyewitnesses later admitted they were pressured by police. In 1985, a judge overturned Carter's conviction, stating the case was based on racial prejudice rather than reason. He was finally free after nearly 2 decades of wrongful imprisonment. Reuben Carter dedicated the rest of his life to helping other wrongfully convicted prisoners. His story became a movie, The Hurricane, 1999, starring Denzel Washington. But the question remains, how many more innocent lives are still trapped behind bars? What's your take? Let's talk in the comments. A tragic miscarriage of justice. On April 19, 1989, a horrific crime shook New York City. A young woman, Trisha Mealy, was brutally attacked and left for dead in Central Park. The city demanded justice, and police arrested 5 Black and Latino teenagers: Kevin Richardson, Raymond Santana, Antron McCrae, Yusuf Stalam, and Corey Wise. Under intense pressure, the boys, aged 14 to 16, were interrogated for hours without lawyers or parents. Exhausted and scared, they gave false confessions, not realizing they were sealing their fate. Despite no DNA evidence linking them to the crime, they were convicted and sentenced to 6 to 13 years in prison. For over a decade, the truth remained hidden. Then, in 2002, a convicted serial rapist, Macias Reyes, confessed to the crime. DNA tests confirmed he was the real attacker. The convictions of the Central Park Five were overturned, but by then, they had lost their youth to a system that failed them. In 2014, New York City paid a $41 million settlement, but no amount of money could return what was stolen. Their story, later adapted into the Netflix series When They See Us, exposed how racial bias and wrongful convictions destroy lives. How many more innocent lives must suffer before justice is truly fair? Share your thoughts below. 45 years behind bars for nothing. In 1971, Richard Phillips, a Detroit man, was arrested for a murder he never committed. The case relied on false testimony from a man trying to reduce his own sentence. With no physical evidence and no solid proof, Phillips was sentenced to life in prison without parole. For decades, he maintained his innocence, but no one listened. Years passed, hope faded, and the world outside changed. Then, in 2017, a shocking truth emerged. The key witness admitted he had lied under oath. The courts re-examined the case, and in 2018, Phillips was finally declared wrongfully convicted that stole his life. To survive, he turned to painting, selling artwork to make a living. His story is a painful reminder of how broken the justice system can be. How can we stop such injustices? Should the system do more to compensate the wrongfully convicted? Let's discuss in the comments. The youngest person ever executed in the U.S. In 1944, in the small town of Alcolu, South Carolina, 14-year-old George Stinney Jr. was arrested for the murder of two young white girls, Betty June Binnicker, 11, and Mary Emma Thames, 7. With no lawyer, no parents, and no evidence, he was interrogated for hours until police claimed he confessed. His trial lasted just 2 hours, and the all-white jury took only 10 minutes to sentence him to death by electric chair. George, a small boy weighing only 90 pounds, was so tiny that he needed a booster seat to reach the electric chair. On June 16, 1944, he was executed, his short life ended by a system built on racism and injustice. Decades later, new evidence proved what many suspected. George was completely innocent. In 2014, after 70 years, a judge overturned his conviction, calling it a shocking failure of justice. But it was too late. A child had already paid the ultimate price for a crime he never committed. How many other innocent people have been silenced like George? And how do we prevent such injustices from happening again? Let's talk in the comments. DNA proved him right. In 1984, a shocking crime shook Baltimore, Maryland. A 9-year-old girl, Dawn Hamilton, was brutally murdered. Police were desperate for a suspect. Soon, they arrested Kirk Bloodsworth, a 23-year-old former Marine, based on a witness who claimed he saw him near the crime scene. Despite having no physical evidence, Kirk was convicted of rape and murder in 1985. The jury sentenced him to death. Imagine the horror, an innocent man waiting to die for a crime he never committed. For years, Kirk fought for justice. He read about DNA testing, a new science at that time. With the help of lawyers, he pushed for DNA analysis of the crime scene evidence. Finally, in 1992, the results came back. He was not the killer. After spending 9 years in prison, including 2 on death row, Kirk Bloodsworth was exonerated in 1993. He became the first person in U.S. history to be freed from death row due to DNA evidence. His case changed history. He later worked to pass the Innocence Protection Act, 2004, ensuring DNA testing for other wrongly convicted people. Kirk's story proves one thing: justice delayed is not justice denied, but it takes a fight to prove the truth. The nightmare in Italy. In 2007, Amanda Knox, a 20-year-old American student, moved to Perugia, Italy, for her studies. Just weeks later, her roommate, Meredith Kircher, was found murdered in their apartment. Suspicion quickly fell on Amanda and her boyfriend, Rafael Solicito. Under intense police pressure, she gave a confused statement, one that would haunt her for years. With no solid evidence, Amanda was convicted in 2009 and sentenced to 26 years in prison. The trial became an international media circus, branding her as Foxy Noxy. But in 2011, new forensic tests proved the DNA evidence was flawed. She was acquitted and freed after 4 years behind bars. However, in 2014, Italy's highest court reinstated her conviction, throwing her life into chaos again. It wasn't until 2015 that she was fully exonerated. After 8 years of legal battles, Amanda was finally free. From Stephen Avery to George Stinney Jr., these heartbreaking cases prove one thing: the justice system isn't always just. Innocent people have lost years, dreams, and even their lives to wrongful convictions. Some fought back, some were freed too late, and some never got a second chance. If this can happen to them, could it happen to anyone? How many more lives will be stolen before the system changes? Let's keep this conversation alive. Comment your thoughts below, share this video, and subscribe for more eye-opening stories. Because the fight for justice isn't over yet.